We're going to bring Bill George into the conversation. He's an expert on management who teaches at Harvard and sits on the boards of Goldman Sachs and ExxonMobil. Bill also is a former CEO himself of medical device maker Medtronic. Bill, good to see you. You and I were talking about this Microsoft CEO search in Switzerland just last week. Tell me, from what you've heard here today and what you've read this morning, this idea that Satya Nadella would be elevated internally and possibly Bill Gates would be pushed aside as chairman. Is that the right approach for Microsoft to take?
Well, first of all, Eric, we have no confirmation from John Thompson and the Microsoft board as to that Nadella is the choice. They really haven't said anything, so we need to, with all due respect to them, wait and hear. But let's suppose it is Nadella. It could be an inspired choice. John seemed very enthusiastic. I don't personally know him, but I will say this. They need a major transformation. Ballmer's been there too long. 14 years was too much. The company has missed opportunity after opportunity in the IT space. It's relied very heavily on Office and Windows. In many ways, it's a classic of what Clay Christensen talks about in The Innovator's Dilemma. They're kind of locked into the old world that's going away. They haven't moved aggressively to mobile. You saw the numbers yesterday on Google and Facebook look very strong. Yes, Facebook missed it, but they came back a year later very strong. And I think it's going to take a major makeover. You said 5 years. Could take 10. It's going to be a major change. And I think the key is, does Nadella have the support of the management, which I think he'll get, and the board of directors to make these major changes, to make the painful changes that are going to have to be done. Maybe the investors won't like it. Maybe they'll have to take a short-term hit on the investment, on the stock price. But I think that's what's got to be done, much like Lou Gerstner did at IBM. He did a transformation that led to the Palmisano era that brought IBM back. And I think that's what Microsoft needs. Otherwise, it's going to find itself one day with its base going away, which it hasn't totally, but it'll starting to erode, like IBM did with mainframes.
How far away are we from that day?
Well, that's hard to predict, but you can see it. You can see it in the numbers. You can see PCs declining. You can see the rapid rise of the iPad, which they missed out on, the tablets, as well as the cell phone. Now they own Nokia, but it seems like a day late and a dollar short. So I'm concerned that this is not a company that knows how to innovate. It's too political. Just like when Alan Mulally took over Ford, it was too political, and Gerstner took over IBM. It was all politics. Nadella's going to have to deal with it. He's going to have to make some harsh decisions to get rid of some people that are getting in the way, because they played kind of a political game instead of focusing on where they needed to go with the clarity that a Larry Page brought to Google, Steve Jobs brought to Apple, or Mark Zuckerberg brings, that product clarity. Now, I think the big unknown here is what's going to happen with Bill Gates. He's done a brilliant job of what he's done in healthcare. I have great admiration. His philanthropy is amazing. So will he go and do that? He says he will. He says that's his full-time job. Recently he said that at Davos. Or will he kind of be in there 2 days a week looking at product decisions, and Nadella won't have the freedom to make the decision? I think it's time for a total makeover. I have great respect for what Bill did, but I think it's time for a whole new generation to come in. Nadella's in his mid-40s. Let's let him and a new team he selects run the show for the next 10 years and give him the support to do it. It won't happen in 2 or 3 years.
John, you want to jump in?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think just to build on what Bill's talking about in terms of the trickiness, and I'd be curious to get Bill's take on this, the fact that Steve Ballmer laid out this plan for what Microsoft would be, and then basically said, okay, I'm signing off. You know, this has always been one of these tricky parts of this transition, because we sort of sit here wondering, well, does that mean that the new leader, whether it's an internal or external candidate, has to stick to that pretty fresh plan that Steve Ballmer put on the table, which is meant to address all those issues that Bill just went over?
I think he's going to have to do a total relook at that plan, and almost like a blank sheet of paper, and look at what did they miss the last 10 years, why, and what are they going to have to do. How much of the Ballmer plan does he like or not like? But I'd have to ask you, where was the board with a succession plan? If Ballmer was going out, why isn't there a succession plan? Why wasn't Nadella promoted last September, October? They sure had a lot of candidates twisting in the media, deciding whether they're going to get the job or not. And this is not strong corporate governance. It's not a good example of how you do selection and succession. I'm frustrated. But John, maybe you know why. Why didn't they make the decision a long time ago? You're close to the board and the management.
Well, I mean, as I said, and Eric, we know this has been a very long process, and it's a process that involved a lot of people. And so when you get to the conclusion of where they are now, maybe in retrospect, it looks, Bill is asking a fair question. But I think, as we know, they've looked at so many candidates inside and out.
Bill, if Microsoft is suffering from founders syndrome, you've looked at this situation. It's affected many companies in the past. How long does it take for a company to recover from founder syndrome?
It all depends on what the founder does. If he goes off and does healthcare, you can recover fairly fast. And I think John Thompson's a key player here. He's kind of the third player in this triangle. And John's got a strong background. If he steps up and plays that kind of chair role and gives Nadella freedom to go ahead and do the product, it could work well. But having three people in the soup is going to triangulate a lot of relationships internally, because you have to change those over. That's where the pain comes. When somebody who wanted this job doesn't get it, has to be let go, and you have to select a whole new team. I think the talent is there. I don't have any question about the talent being there. I think it's politics, and you got to stop that. Just like you read about people like Gerstner just stopping it, say that's it. And I think Nadella has to have the freedom to do that, and the board has to give him if he's the choice. We don't know for sure he's the choice, but if he is, the board has to give him total backing through some of that.
All right, Bill, great to see you this morning, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Eric.
The announcement, we believe, coming from Microsoft, that is Bill George, management professor at Harvard University, and our own John Ehrlichman out in Los Angeles.